Hey everybody, welcome to episode 22 of the Rollout Show. I'm your host, Weston. What's poppin'? How's it going? Joined by my co-host, Bradley, who's glaring at me as usual.
Hi, I'm Bradley.
That's
nice
right.
to meet you.
Yeah,
listener.
we're friendly here.
Yeah, very
Howdy
friendly.
there, friend.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 22 of the Rollout Show. Got a lot of good stuff for you today. A lot of baseball, way too much baseball.
Never too much baseball. Never too much.
And, there's some NFL action happening. By action, I mean knees getting ruptured. So that's fun. But we're going to start off today with some housekeeping notes. The show's been around for a little while now, episode 22.
Woohoo!
And we will be switching hosting here in the next few weeks. If you are interested in any of the episodes 20 or earlier, you better get them now because we will be deleting them from our vault. When we're moving to the new hosting service, we're only going to bring episode 21 forward. So anything 20 or older, we are leaving behind. They're not our greatest episodes, not great audio, and it's going to be a pain to get them transitioned over. So we're just not going to do it. And by we, I mean me. I'm not going to do it. So, sorry. You won't want to listen to those episodes anyway. This is a sports show, and it's about being updated, so I figured it wouldn't be a problem.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of people would like about episode 8 or whatever when we were just like really clawing for topics and we were like, well, the Warriors and the Cavs are probably going to the finals. No other sport really has anything going on. Yeah. That was about literally how one episode was of us over an hour dragging on about.
It was horrible.
It was pretty rough. We were really clawing for content.
It almost makes me be like, how do these guys have 4-hour shows every day of the week and fill it? I guess you send it to the audience and you get interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. Sometimes it's tough to fill time. Usually, though, we want to keep going and have to make ourselves stop because, unfortunately, we have stuff to do.
Yes, and stuff to talk about, other topics. I mean, we love the NBA, but we can't talk 60 minutes on the Hawks' huge signing about Luke Babbitt now, can we? Even though I do think that's the kind of signing that's going to take them to a championship. You guys better book it. The Atlanta Hawks are taking it all next year with him and Dwayne Dedman.
The most ridiculous
Mike Muscala.
Most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Absolutely asinine.
Fear the Hawks, man.
Fear the Hawks.
What do we say every year? Even when the Hawks try to be terrible, they're still like the 7 seed, no matter what they do.
I mean, the East is so bad they'll probably make the playoffs. But they won't be good.
No matter what, the Hawks are always in the hunt. Always. Always.
Anyway.
You gotta love that consistency.
Anyway, you want to get this thing rolling?
Sure, let's do it. Where would you like to start? Would you like to start with the NFL and
you're the host.
Knees exploding? Yeah, but I like to, share the responsibility here. I'm a delegator.
That depends on if you want to bore the listeners to sleep with your baseball talk yet or not.
It is very entertaining baseball talk. Thank you very much.
All right, let's talk Ryan Tannehill.
All right, let's do it.
So last season, he had some knee issues. I think he sprained his ACL. He missed the playoffs. But they opted not to do surgery, which people questioned at the time, and I'm not going to second guess a doctor, but it did seem weird. And now he has an undisclosed knee injury. He went down in practice, non-contact, and the Dolphins are really worried about it. Apparently, there's a report right now that they kind of feared his knee was just going to be a ticking time bomb this season anyway, which is very interesting considering they opted not to have surgery on his knee. So this doesn't seem like a big deal until you remember that the Dolphins actually made the playoffs last year and were pretty good.
Think about that offense, though. I mean, they have an electric offense. Their wide receiving core, amazing. Good running backs. And their defense is kind of underrated. They'll keep you in the game. They aren't like an elite defense or anything, but, I mean, they play well enough to, they don't hurt you. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, unlike basketball, the Dolphins are a good team, and being good is enough to have a chance to win in the NFL. Just because it's a win and go, or win in advance, lose and go home kind of thing.
Right.
Even if you're just kind of good, you can do some stuff with a few bounces go your way, score some extra points off turnovers, and all of a sudden you're winning games you shouldn't.
And see, they're very solid in all facets of the game. They have a pretty good O-line. It's not elite. We're not calling them like, the Raiders or Cowboys O-line over here, but they have a good enough O-line, good enough defensive line, good secondary, good linebackers.
They're solid basically everywhere.
I mean, and the best part of their team is the wide receiving core, but I mean, that's really one of the spots you really want to have, really good athletes in that they have. I mean, Kenny Stills, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker. I mean, they can play with anybody.
I feel bad for the Dolphins losing Tannehill, but also I don't think Tannehill is very good. So maybe this won't be a horrible thing. There's a few guys that it seems like they're targeting, and we're gonna see which one we each think they should go for. Weston, you go ahead.
Well, the first replacement QB who they can talk to is the one who I feel is the best fit, and that is Mr. Pride of Santa Claus, Indiana, Jay Cutler.
Is he really the pride of
Santa Claus, Indiana?
Is he the pride, though? Is anyone prideful of Jay Cutler?
I mean, they probably like Holiday World better because that's a cool theme park. Shout out to Holiday World.
What is wrong with you?
They got free sunscreen over there.
Oh, that's a good deal.
And free refills on soda, right?
At a theme park?
At a theme park. They're just sitting out in the open, and you just take a cup, get some Pepsi.
We need to go there. That's a great
Holiday
deal.
World's a solid place. My cousin works there, so shout out to Holiday World. Anyway.
I got some complaints about the last episode about how we talked about coffee for the first 10 minutes. This isn't going great so far.
No, it's not. This segment has been sponsored by the Jay Cutler Foundation and Holiday World.
No, we're
and
not.
Visit Santa Claus, Indiana.
So
Anyway,
why do you think Jay Cutler's a good fit?
I think it's, for one, I'm still a believer in Jay Cutler. I know I'm one of the few.
One of the only.
One of the only. But I feel like he gets a really bad rap in the league. But he's played in Adam Gase's system, and the best year of his career came under Adam Gase as his offensive coordinator. And Adam Gase is the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And, I mean, Cutler's best season came under Adam Gase, and basically he said that was the best coach he ever worked with. And you saw how Cutler did last year without Adam Gase and everything that happened. So I just think it's, I mean, he already knows the most of the playbook, most of the plays. I mean, Adam Gase has worked with him in the past, and he knows how to get the most out of Jay Cutler. So I just think it's a great fit because not too many people are out there on the market that already know basically what you're going to do.
So it's probably what's going to happen. If I had to predict what's actually going to happen, Jay Cutler makes a lot of sense. He knows most of the playbook, not a lot of relearning that would need to go on there. Presumably he's still in football shape because he's been looking to get a gig. He didn't want to do broadcasting. It was sort of a backup plan. But he is probably the third most talented available quarterback. The other two guys would be Tony Romo, who is a future Hall of Famer who will be in the broadcast booth, and Colin Kaepernick, who, he's got his own baggage that we have argued about before, and I think is silly. But anyway,
baggage nonetheless.
Tony Romo, to me, makes a lot of sense just because he's so good. To me, talent should trump all other sort of factors. Like, yeah, Tony Romo doesn't know the playbook, but I have faith that he can learn it quick enough. If Sam Bradford can learn the Minnesota playbook in a few weeks, I mean, Tony Romo can do it.
Don't take shots at Sam Bradford.
I'm just saying.
He's a bright young man.
Yeah, but he's not Tony Romo, is all I'm saying.
I mean,
and Kaepernick, look, he's got his whole national anthem thing, which is ridiculous, but we don't need to get into that again. He's got his wearing a Fidel Castro t-shirt. Probably wouldn't jive well with Miami.
He did that in Miami too,
yeah,
and that didn't go well.
They weren't real pleased about that, which I completely get. My grandpa's Cuban. I understand. But, like, he's better than Jay Cutler is by a significant margin. And he has way more upside. But if it's the sort of thing like, do you actually believe in Ryan Tannehill going forward or not? Do you think do your doctors believe he's going to be fine? And do you think he can still be your franchise guy? Because if so, then yeah, maybe you only want to bring in Jay Cutler or Tony Romo, the bad thing about Tony Romo is he's still under contract with the Cowboys, so you would have to trade for him, which may be too much to spend. I'd give like a third rounder for a year of Tony Romo, but there's no way that would happen, given that the Vikings spent 2 firsts on Sam Bradford last year, and that's too much when you have Jay Cutler there for free.
And think about what happened when Tony Romo thought he was going to get cut, and then the Cowboys held on to him, were trying to trade him, and then we don't want to trade him to Houston and everything. So then Tony basically just had no choice really than to just say, well, if this is how you guys are going to treat me, then I'm done.
And maybe because of that, they'd be willing to take less for him, but I doubt that. And I would give up that for Tony Romo if I didn't have Jay Cutler available, but because of that, I'd rather keep the picks. But if you're not sure about Tannehill long term, I'd go with Kaepernick just because he's young and he could be your franchise guy going forward.
We have different views on Kaepernick's talent level and fit.
Yeah, I think you're way too low on Kaepernick.
See, because my thing with Kaepernick is...
his QBR was 90 last year, right?
Yeah, he had a pretty good season last year.
He had one bad game.
His first good year in 3 years.
Right, it was his first healthy year in 3 years too.
I mean, yeah, but everybody's hurt.
I understand, and he had that game where he threw 4 picks in the first half, which is horrible,
and didn't complete a pass.
But
against the Bears.
I've seen Matthew Stafford do that too, and we both have very high regard for Matthew Stafford. So
I don't think he's good enough where it's you see him as the future of your franchise kind of thing. Where
you think Ryan Tannehill is better than Colin Kaepernick? I think they're about the same.
I think they're roughly about the same.
Okay, that's fair.
That's why I would personally, I'd probably rather you have Tannehill under contract anyway, whether he gets healthy or not. Is kind of the thing.
Right. I just mean if you don't believe in Ryan Tannehill, then go with the gamble on Colin Kaepernick. Why not?
That's the thing why I think Adam Gase took that job in the first place, because he does believe in Ryan Tannehill.
No, that's fair. Yeah. And he had the 49ers job available to him and he didn't take it.
Right.
I think that's a fair point. I don't know. I think they're going to sign Jay Cutler. If I were them, I would try and get Tony Romo, even though it may not be feasible. But if you're pretty high on Kaepernick, talent-wise, and you don't like Tannehill,
because my thing would be it'd be a system fit as well. Because
you can always change the system.
You can, but I mean, if it's easier to just go with Jay Cutler, who's already done it before, and you've already seen what you can get out of him, then you might as well just roll with him. I don't think that's a fair
argument when Ryan Tannehill is running the system, and Ryan Tannehill and Kaepernick basically have the same skill set.
To some degree, yeah. It's just
except I don't think Tannehill is great. I think Kaepernick is slightly better, but that's a personal preference.
Because, I mean, he's kind of underrated as a runner, Tannehill is. He's, sneaky fast, because a lot of people don't give him, the credit, because it's I feel like Tannehill's become a punchline.
I think he gets more credit for being mobile. You don't think so? I think the guys who don't get credit for that are guys like Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck.
No, Andrew Luck,
especially
for sure.
Andrew Luck, who's actually runs a 4.6, and you would never know it.
Exactly. That's the thing. I feel like more people just see Tannehill and are Tannehill, what a bust. He's just very mediocre or whatever.
Well, because he is. And it doesn't help the other quarterbacks that came out in that class.
That's kind of what it is. I think that's more of
because that was the Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck draft, right?
It was RG3, Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson.
I wasn't going to mention RG3 because it kind of runs counter to my argument, but yeah.
Yes. But there were a lot of big names. That was also Nick Foles, Kirk Cousins, all those guys.
It's a good quarterback class.
That's right. Especially my guy Cousins, right?
Cousins has turned into something.
Yes.
I will agree. I was extremely down on Cousins the first while of his career, but you've held tight, and he's gonna get paid, whether it's by the Redskins or someone else.
Whether it's on another 1-year deal with the Washington Redskins.
Gosh. That's such a. We don't need to get into that.
It'll just lead to us. Take way too much time to sort out.
It'll lead to us arguing about Kirk Cousins again, and we don't need that in our life.
He's elite. He's okay. He's elite.
I mean, he's not elite, but
probably not. But
yay! That's how you win an argument.
Just what I mean. We'll argue over whether he's good or very good. Because I'll say he's very good, and you'll say he's good.
I think we spent half an hour one show doing just that.
It's
Because we
okay,
were
that's-
arguing whether someone should trade for Jimmy Garoppolo or Kirk Cousins.
Oh, yeah, and I was like, Kirk Cousins all the way. You're like, Jimmy Garoppolo. I was like, well, Garoppolo's unknown. Kirk Cousins, you know what you're going to get.
You're taking the gamble, man. You know what you got in Kirk Cousins.
And it's been very, very good. It's been a high level of quarterback play.
It's been good. See, here we
go.
go.
Oh my gosh.
Move on, please. That's
why I'm
NFL
supporting
news.
Jay Cutler.
So how do you think the Dolphins are going to fare this year, given their...
I still think they're a playoff team, honestly, because, I mean...
wild card team?
Yeah, I mean...
I assumed you didn't think they were going to win the division with the Patriots.
I mean, unless the Patriots really have a down year, which, I mean, you have to be on the lookout for them to that to happen at some point.
I mean, at this point in Brady's career, it's gotten to the point where eventually time's going to hit him like a truck.
Yeah.
It's sort of what we're waiting on with LeBron. Like, eventually one year he's going to come out and you're just going to know this isn't the same.
You're just going to see, you know what, that's it.
And that happens. I mean, that's how these things happen a lot of the times. I think Brady's got a couple years left just because he doesn't rely on the deep ball and he's really accurate in the medium to short game. And he has the greatest coach of all time behind him. So...
See, that's the thing. You just always have to be on the lookout. I'm not predicting that happening next year, but I definitely think the Dolphins are by far and away the second best team in that division.
Oh,
with
easy.
The Jets and Bills.
Easy.
I mean, that's...
Which is
no
crazy.
offense to those people that are on those teams, because there's good talent on both of those teams, but man...
You know what's crazy is 2 years ago, we would have both said definitively that the Jets were the second best team. And now I think they're the fourth in that division.
I mean, you lose your two best wide receivers, your quarterback, and, I mean, they still have a pretty good defensive line.
But that's it.
That's all they have on defense,
but think
really.
2 years ago, you still had prime Darrelle Revis. You had Fitzmagic. You had two dynamic wide receivers in Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker. You had the best D-line in football with Muhammad Wilkerson, Sheldon Richardson. And
Leonard Williams.
Leonard Williams, who's blossoming into a star. You had, I mean, you were productive everywhere. You had Chris Ivory, who was actually getting it done. That team was really good a couple years ago.
And that is case in point of age hitting you like a truck.
When all your
Revis.
stars go down with age. And, I mean, it doesn't help that your quarterback's one good year was obviously a fluke now.
Yeah. I mean, it also doesn't help that it was at the very end of his career as well, because it's like you're really playing with fire there. But, I mean, they really didn't do anything to replace him besides spending third-round picks on project quarterbacks who weren't ready yet.
And neither one has turned out.
No, neither one has turned out. I mean, there's still a chance, be optimistic, but yeah, neither one has turned out at this point.
I think there's a chance on Hackenberg. I think the Bryce Petty train has sailed. This will be his fourth year in the league. If you're going to be able to play in the NFL, you need to be ready by now.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, Hackenberg, he's still got a chance, but I mean,
this will be Hackenberg's sophomore year, right? I mean, you gotta give him a little bit of time. Bryce Petty's had 3 years. Like, put up or shut up at this point.
I mean, Geno could come back, right?
Oh, gosh. We don't need to argue about Geno again.
But anyway, yeah, I think they're definitely a playoff team.
I think they have a chance. I think they're going to miss it this year just because teams that are 10-6, like, and I think they're about a 10-6 team.
I'd say so.
One season that can get you into a wild card spot and one season that could miss the playoffs. Like the year that the Patriots went 11-5 with Matt Castle and missed the playoffs.
There's so many good
teams.
Seems
Crazy.
Yeah.
But there are seasons when that happens. And then there are seasons when a 7-9 team can get into the playoffs.
Case in point, the Seattle Seahawks went in the NFC
mode.
West with a 7-9 record.
That was the beast mode game.
That's right.
Against the Saints.
Start of a legend.
That's the greatest highlight I've ever seen in my life of anything.
Now you're going to see that with the silver and black.
Thank you for leading us here. How do you think he's going to do this season?
I think he's going to be pretty productive for what they need him to do. I mean, which is not a whole heck of a lot because they're mainly going to be passing the ball anyway.
Yeah, I think he'll get like 15 carries a game. So positives. His workload will be limited, like 15 carries a game. It'll be by far the best O-line he's ever played behind, and it'll be the best offense he's ever been a part of.
And it'll be with the franchise he's always wanted to play for.
Yeah, it's his hometown. Downside, it's his 31st. He's 31, and the last time we saw him on a field, he looked old. So
he had a year to rest, man. He played a lot of video games.
I agree that like a year without getting hit probably helps running backs, but the last time we saw him, he looked old.
Yeah, he didn't look great.
And he was banged up.
He was injured. That's very true.
But it seemed to me like there were injuries that a younger player would generally always play through, and he couldn't get on the field for extended periods of time. I'm worried about him. Honestly, I'm worried about that whole team. Bold prediction, since we're here. The Raiders don't win that division. I guess it's not that bold because the Chiefs are there. Fine, okay.
Yeah,
the Raiders missed the playoffs. I'll say it.
Wow, you're going.
The Raiders
real bold.
missed the playoffs. They were really good last season, but most of their wins were very close games. They could have easily not been. What they finished 12-4.
Yeah,
they could have easily been like 9-7.
Well, it's kind of like the opposite what happened with the Giants 2 years ago, Coughlin's last year, where it seemed like they lost every game by like 3 points.
Yep.
And it was at like the very end of the game, and then everybody was fighting with each other, and Coughlin lost his job, and it's like, this easily could have been a playoff favorite team. Very easily.
I think the difference is the Giants lost most of those games due to their players' mistakes, and the Raiders won their games. I'll give them credit.
With a young team, too.
And I give players credit for winning close games. I think Derek Carr has a chance to be special. I think their wide receiver core is really good. I think they have
Shout out to Amari.
I think they have the second best O-line in football. And they have arguably the best defensive player in football. Problem is the rest of their defense sucks.
It's one guy.
Their running back situation isn't great unless Marshawn Lynch can turn back the clock. And I mean, most of their wins last season were really close wins. I'll be rooting for the Raiders. I like most of their players, and I think they're a fun team to watch. But we'll see. I have a strong feeling that they're gonna miss the playoffs barely. I see them as like an 8-8 team this year.
I don't quite see them that negatively. I actually think of them more positively because, I mean, going into last season, before Derek Carr got hurt in the very last game, they were basically a lot of people's pick to make it to the Super Bowl. It was either going to be them or the Patriots.
Like,
well, there's the challenger for the Patriots.
I was on that bandwagon too. I'm with you.
I just think everybody is going to take that next step. And also another news fact is Conley, their first round pick, there were no charges actually filed against him. So he is, that is huge because he was a top 5 talent that fell all the way to them. They really gambled because they don't really have a good secondary, and that's going to change things.
Can you give some backstory on that, please, for the people who don't religiously watch the draft like we do?
Right. Garin Conley was arguably the top-rated cornerback in a very deep cornerback class coming into the draft this year, seen as a top 5 pick in most mock drafts out of Ohio State. He was in a situation in Cleveland in a hotel room where it seemed like it was a he said, she said situation where she was claiming he forced her to have sex with him in a threesome, and he was claiming that he brought her up there to watch. So it was a very weird kind of situation that you really weren't sure what was going to happen.
Extremely weird. And I mean, it's good for the Raiders that it worked out. If he did nothing wrong, then I'm glad he didn't get faced with any undue punishment.
Right.
Hopefully everyone's okay in that situation. It's just strange.
It was a very, very odd situation to come out and then be very, very public right as he was about to get drafted too. It was like, ooh.
Well, and he was public about it the whole time.
He was.
Like, and it seemed clear that whoever was advising him on PR issues wanted him to get out in front of this.
Right.
Because I remember us watching, we were kind of on his side after ESPN explained the whole story. We were kind of sympathetic to his story, if you will. And I don't know all the details on it, but hopefully he did nothing wrong, and hopefully everything
learns from the situation too, kind of thing.
And you know not to get yourself in those sorts of situations going forward, and know who you can trust. But yeah, back to football.
Back to football. Yep,
that's great for the Raiders. I also don't usually put a lot of stock in rookie corners because, really? I mean, rookie corners last year, the guy who came out of Florida,
Vernon Hargreaves.
Hargreaves.
He was not very good, but I mean, he fell on a lot of people's boards, not named the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Was there a good corner rookie last year?
I'm trying to think, but it wasn't like a great rookie cornerback class. It wasn't like this season's
I remember
cornerback
coming
class.
off of last season being pretty high on Hargreaves, thinking he had a decent season until I actually looked at the numbers.
Because I just saw, from what I saw of him, I watched him in a lot of the big games, and he got burned.
Yeah.
And he got burned by people
over and
slower
over.
than him. Like, Kelvin Benjamin made him look like a child.
I always worry about rookies and these really one-on-one spotlight spots, especially when you basically have to come in and be the number one guy.
Right.
That means you have to go against guys like Brandon Cooks, like I don't know why Brandon Cooks was the first number one.
I mean, were you
How
thinking
about
of
Antonio
the Saints?
Brown?
Hey,
Oh
you were
my
thinking
God.
NFC South.
I
You have to go
was.
up against Julio Jones, who
Mike
is
Evans?
not only... Well, he has to go up against Mike Evans in practice.
Oh my God. What's wrong with me? No. I'm talking about
Hargreaves.
no, I'm talking about Conley.
Oh,
Talking about
okay.
Conley.
Okay. I thought you were still talking about Hargreaves.
The intern is angry.
The intern's very angry at you making
Let
a
me go
terrible
calm
point.
the intern. Keep going. Keep the show rolling.
So, I mean, that's one of the things, like, Vernon Hargreaves is kind of a little undersized, and there's also the pressure of him playing in his hometown, you know, on a young team that's making a, you know, step forward, which, I mean, he had a pretty good year overall. It's just, I feel like he's one of those players that it's taking him a while to adjust to the league, and he's going to be the anti-sophomore slump, because there's some players who have basically the freshman 15 where they're just not really good in their first season, taking time to adjust. And then there's those other guys that take a big step their second year and just go on from there.
We'll see. I worry about rookies in these really spotlighted positions because all of a sudden you are the top corner on what's supposed to be a Super Bowl contender.
Right.
That's a lot of pressure on a guy.
That is a lot of pressure on a guy, but he's been there a while now. It's his second year. He's got the faith and trust of all of his teammates, and so I think he'll be all right.
All right. Next topic, I guess. That's enough NFL.
The MLB trade
Oh,
deadline.
no. Can we skip this one?
No, we
No,
are
you're
not
right.
skipping this one. It's one of the biggest topics.
All right. Try and make this more entertaining than it usually
It's one
is.
of the biggest topics.
Well, you said before it's your favorite
It's like
sporting
Christmas.
event of the year, and we were supposed
It's
to pull
like
out.
Christmas.
We were supposed to put a poll out, and we did not. Really failed on that
that's
social
right.
media director.
We talked about it at the beginning of the show, and I didn't want to. Ooh, we actually had a trade go down right now.
Oh, goody. Wait,
Yeah.
what do you mean right now? Isn't the trade deadline over?
Well, this is a good segue. The non-waiver trade deadline is over. So,
Can you explain the difference, please?
Yes. You can
For us ignorant member, I mean you ignorant member. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, what can happen is you can still make trades in August. It's just a lot tougher. So, what can happen is, you know, up until July 31st, you're free to make a trade with anyone you want to. And you don't have to, you know, meet any requirements really or anything. In August, however, you have to put somebody on waivers, revocable waivers. So once that person clears waivers for the rest of the month, you're free to trade them to whoever you want. But if somebody claims said person, then you can only work out a trade with them and you can't put them back on waivers.
Now, how is waiver order decided?
Record. So worst team gets first pick. So if, say, the
Current
Oakland
season, right? This isn't like past season.
Yeah, current season. So if like the Oakland A's, for example, want Justin Verlander, who was put on waivers, but Justin Verlander cleared waivers, they could claim Justin Verlander. But if, say, the Astros really wanted him, the A's could have claimed him just to block the Astros. So they don't necessarily know who's picked. It's just at the beginning of the day, hey, these are the players that are on waivers. And you can send in your claim, and then whoever claimed him ahead based on record gets the priority.
Question.
Yes.
Justin Verlander's placed on waivers. The Astros try and block the Pirates by claiming him, and then they don't really want him, so they don't trade for him. Does he get back up on for sale, or how does that work?
Well, the Pirates are worse than the Astros.
Well,
but
you know what
I know
meant.
what you're talking about.
Pick a team. The Red Sox.
Okay. Like the Red Sox, I'll do it this way. The Red Sox claim him to block the Astros. We'll go that way.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So what can happen is he can either get pulled back by the Tigers, or the Tigers can say, here you go, and just send him off for nothing, which means they have to take on all of his contract. We haven't really seen that since Alex Rios from the Blue Jays to the White Sox, where the White Sox claimed him in August, and the Blue Jays were like, oh, thank goodness, he's your problem now.
What constitutes a pullback? Like, what has to happen?
Basically, Avila, the general manager of the Tigers, just says, now we're pulling him off of waivers, sorry. Like, we don't want to work out a trade with you. So they just pull him
back.
back.
And then you can't put him back on waivers.
You can't put him back on waivers.
So blocking essentially really does block for the season.
Right, it does. And you only have 48 hours to work out a trade with that team. Otherwise, it doesn't work out.
Wait, so 48 hours pass. Does the player go back on waivers, or do they're just on the Tigers?
He would just be on the Tigers. That's why it's really important if a player clears waivers. And basically during this time period, the entire roster of a team will get put on waivers. And it's just a way to kind of gauge their value. So a lot of guys, like you'll see Giancarlo Stanton, he'll get put on waivers and he'll most likely clear because, I mean, he's still owed $290 million. So unless a team really claims him, but then they run that risk of, say, the Yankees claim him, and then the Marlins are just like, your problem, and just dump the salary.
Man, baseball transactions are so interesting. Why can't the sport be more interesting?
Like, you gotta start with transactions and build your way up.
Having these talks about basketball or football, but like,
wouldn't it be awesome?
I don't care about baseball enough.
It's so complex and so great.
I love it. I agree. It's awesome. Every time you talk about it, my ears perk up. And then I remember we're talking about baseball, and I'm like, ugh, who cares?
Wow, rough.
I'm sorry. Okay. Do your MLB trade deadline thing. Thank you. And that was baseball education with Weston. Yay! Okay, thank you.
So anyway, it's basically, and by the way, the trade that just happened, the Pirates get Sean Rodriguez from the Braves, which is kind of a surprising move, as Sean Rodriguez was on the Pirates the past 3 years, and now they get him back.
Good for him.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad he's healthy again. He wasn't likely to play this year after a bad car accident.
Ouch.
Yeah, he was in Miami. It was right after he signed his contract. Somebody had stolen a police car and hit him head on in a stolen police car with his family and everything in there.
And that was Florida Man.
Florida Man. He's a nice guy though. I met him in St. Louis one time. Fun fact.
Cool.
Yeah, nice dude.
Humble brag.
Yeah. Brush your shoulders off. Anyway, it was kind of an uneventful trade deadline. I sat there on Twitter all day. I'm pretty sure some of you guys noticed. I was tweeting a ton that day.
If you were on Twitter, you saw us. We were well represented on Twitter that day by our man Weston. So give him a round of applause. Lucy, clap. Lucy is my dog. She is also our intern, by the way. You can see pictures of her on Instagram shortly.
Yeah, she's asleep, but thank you, appreciate it. But that was a lot of fun.
We were well represented on
a lot of impressions. Day. It was great. People on the polls. It was nice. Anyway, it was pretty uneventful until basically the last hour. Major chip fell. Yu Darvish ended up going to the Dodgers. For a couple prospects, one of which I said was a speedster, Willie Calhoun. That was actually tongue-in-cheek. He's actually very, very slow.
Oh, I'm glad you cleared that up, because I wouldn't have known.
At first, I actually thought he was fast, because I'd heard somewhere he was fast, and I looked up the scouting report, and I was like, oh, wait, well, I'm just going to make a joke out of it.
Hilarious.
I know, right?
And hilarity ensued.
He's plays second base and outfield right now. Defensively, he's got a good arm and everything, but range is going to be a question because he really doesn't run well, so he may profile more as a DH in the future. But he was the headliner of the prospect deal, and then they threw in a couple of other lower-level prospects. But, I mean, that's still a good get for Yu Darvish, considering the market turned out to be a very heavy buyer's market. Because there were some teams, like the Cardinals, who ended up not even making really any deals, and the Astros seemingly wasting their time and trying to get Zach Britton from the Orioles, which is a crazy story because Houston had a lot of potential deals for Zach Britton, it seems like, that were approved. And then the Orioles have a infamous history of blocking deals due to air quote medical reasons, because they have very, very stringent medical requirements, which is that they've brought up to try to help in negotiations for free agents and everything, and it's backfired on them. And their owner is also very, very involved, let's say, in decision making. So
Oh, that's never good.
no,
in
it's
any
not.
sport.
That's not good. The Astros owner publicly said, well, we had a couple of deals on the table that fell through at the 11th hour that were agreed to, but you really can't do anything when an owner steps in and vetoes what you're trying to do.
Ouch.
Yeah, and he threw in due to medical reasons in there, which is basically 100% Baltimore, because they're the ones that really are notorious for doing that. So Angelos was not ready to give up his star closer, which apparently who Houston was focused on, and that really prevented them from making any other moves, which means they should probably try to have an active August, because this is a very, very good team, and you can never know. You never get unlimited chances to win the World Series, no matter how young your team is and how good you think your team is. Stuff happens, and you have to go for it when you have a chance to win the World Series. And right now, they traded for Francisco Liriano, who's a starter with the Blue Jays, and they're trying to convert him to a reliever. But they're going to have to do something else. The players were not happy with the moves.
Are those all the big moves? Is that it?
Also, Sonny Gray going to the Yankees, that was a big one. There were a couple other teams that tried to get Sonny Gray that were kind of a surprise. There was a report by Ken Rosenthal that the Cardinals jumped in at the last minute and offered a package of Steven Piscotty, who is a very cheap and controlled budding star outfielder, but who's had some personal things come up and had a down season this year, but it would get him closer to his family in Oakland. And two of the top prospects in the Cardinals system, and they turned that down for the package headlined by Jorge Mateo, he actually is a speedster, probably the fastest guy in the minor leagues, maybe in all of baseball, who is a Yankees prospect. I saw him multiple times. And James Kaepernick, who is undergone Tommy John surgery and is going to miss the entire season, and Dustin Fowler, who never even got an at-bat in his major league debut with the Yankees this year because he was going for a foul ball and it led him towards foul territory, and he broke his kneecap over the side of the wall.
Gosh.
The first inning of his major league debut. How terrible is that, right?
That sucks.
So they basically got two people coming back from semi-major injuries who aren't going to play the rest of the year, and Jorge Mateo. So, I mean, you can't really fault Billy Beane for whatever he's thinking, but a lot of people were really shocked that Billy was so set on getting two guys who are undergone major injury concerns.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Who do you think won trade deadline day, and who do you think lost trade deadline day?
That's a tough question. I think obviously
bringing the hard hitters.
The hard hitters right now. I know. Obviously, Houston's a loser. I think the Indians lost as well because the Indians really didn't do anything. They got Geno Smith, who's very solid middle reliever, which is kind of guy you need. But Andrew Miller went down. They have some questions in their starting rotation as well. Miller should be back for the playoffs, but still, you need to bolster your bullpen as much as you can, and there were bigger moves out there. I'd say the Yankees are a winner for what they did. Also the Nationals, I didn't think they were going to do a whole lot to begin with, but they made some very solid additions to their bullpen. They aren't the elite guys, but their bullpen is a whole lot better now than it was at the beginning of the season. None of the guys are elite. They're not Andrew Miller or Aroldis Chapman that's going to come in and necessarily shut the door, but their bullpen's a lot deeper than it was, and they didn't have to give up a whole heck of a lot to get those guys. And also the Dodgers. I was surprised they did it, but they actually pulled the trigger on a move, and they're very notorious for holding on to their prospects for dear life and not willing to give anybody up to get somebody good. And this year it seems like they're actually willing to go for it.
All right. Final question.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I'm ready for it.
Who is winning the World Series this year? And do you think the trade deadline had any impact on that?
Before the trade deadline, I'm still leaning this way. I'm still leaning Houston Astros. I think the team is just so deep.
So you think they didn't mess up bad enough to ruin their chances?
I think they have something coming in the works soon. And if they don't, then it's going to be a huge wasted opportunity. And I'm going to go against, I'm going to change my mind. But you see teams like the Cubs, who are also a winner. They went out and made some great moves, shoring up the bullpen, catching situations, starting rotation. But just watching the Cubs play this year, I don't think they're necessarily going to get there because
you think they have the championship hangover?
I do, and things haven't worked out like they thought because this is really the first full year Schwarber's played, and he's not been good.
Yeah, which is crazy considering how good he was in the World Series.
And I think that's part of the fact that Cleveland's rotation was in shambles, and also people didn't know how to pitch him because, he hadn't been in the majors that long and hadn't really faced the Indians ever in his career. So it's just one of those things, like, you never know what's going to happen, especially with younger guys. And then for his standards, Rizzo's kind of had a down year. Bryant, he's still been productive, but he's been a little banged up. So, and Zobrist has kind of looked like age has hit him like a brick wall. He's had a very, very down year. And Jason Hayward, he's playing good defense, but they didn't sign him just to play good defense. He's still not producing to the level that his contract is. But we'll see. I still think Houston, just going back to the World Series prediction, I think Houston's too good right now, especially when Carlos Correa comes back. They're too deep of a team. I think they stand a good chance. The Indians, the Royals as well, because you can never sleep on that team. They've been there twice. They've won it once, and they all know this is their last ride together, and that's always a team you have to watch out for.
But overall, you like the Astros still?
I still like the Astros.
Okay.
I think I'd go Astros 1, Royals 2, Indians 3. I know I'm seem very American League heavy over here, but I think the top contenders in the National League are really the Dodgers and the Rockies.
And I know you never trust the Dodgers.
I just
Not
really
until you do it.
I really don't trust the Dodgers.
You gotta do it in the playoffs at least once to earn a little respect from Weston.
Yeah, because they always. Sorry, Dodgers fans, but I've watched a lot of Dodgers playoff matchups, and last year was the furthest they've gotten in a long time, and they've always seemed to have the most talented and best team on paper depth-wise, for sure, and they just never seem to do anything with it. And honestly, I don't know if they've done enough to change that, especially in the bullpen and the rotation, because a lot of their guys are kind of ticking time bombs with injuries, and when they're healthy, they pitch great, but their starters only go 5 or 6 innings if you're not named Kershaw, and Kershaw's back is flaring up again. So, yes, I'm not sold on him.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other baseball talk you want to get to, or can we move on?
Would you like to talk about a story you actually know quite a bit about?
Oh, Avila. Yeah. Okay, so fun story. The Tigers GM, something Avila, I don't remember his first name.
Al
Avila traded his son.
Alex Avila.
Oh, that's cute.
I'm pretty sure Alex is junior, but Al and Alex.
Okay. So Alex Avila is a rising star, played for the Tigers. He was a catcher. Tell me if I get anything wrong, Weston, our baseball expert.
He's about 30. He's having a breakout year this year.
Oh, he's 30? I didn't know he's that
I would not quite call him a rising star.
I just knew he was having a better year than normal.
Oh, he's having a very, very good year.
So his father, wearing 2 hats, the daddy hat and the GM hat, did what was best for the organization. It's when you have a guy who's performing better than he usually does, you sell high, right?
Right.
So,
especially if they're on an expiring contract.
So I guess he didn't feel bad about it. He understands it's baseball. His son Alex didn't feel bad about it. Oh my goodness, that was not English. His son Alex did not feel bad about it because he understands just baseball. And even Al's wife was fine. Al's wife said, "It's okay, I understand." Al's mother, Alex's grandmother, was apparently furious and was not happy and called him like every day once they knew it was going to happen, because Al let Alex know. It's a nice fatherly thing to do.
He kept him informed.
And according to Al Avila, he always keeps his players informed on that kind of stuff.
Oh yes, he's very, very transparent. He's really a player's general manager. He actually has a relationship with them, and he's very, very forward with them. So
Yeah, so Alex knew this was going to happen, and Alex's grandmother, Al's mother, called Al like every day before it happened, saying, "You better not trade him. You better not trade him." Except it told him in Spanish, which I don't know the words for,
Yes.
of course. But yeah, I just found that a fascinating story. Like, how does that happen? You're a father, and your son's playing for you, and he's playing great, and you're probably so proud of him. This is the baseball player you always thought he could be. But for the organization, it would make a whole lot of sense on paper to really trade him and get everything you could. And then you actually pull the trigger and do it. And I don't know. I'm obviously not a general manager, so maybe it wasn't that hard. He made it seem like it wasn't that hard, which sort of comes off as cold-hearted to me. But it's fascinating.
I just know a little bit about him and Alex's relationship, and it's pretty straightforward. They're pretty good about it because Alex last year signed with the White Sox. So at Thanksgiving, and this is right after Al, his dad, got promoted to general manager of the Tigers. So he comes into Thanksgiving and he's handing out all these Chicago White Sox hats to his family and everything, wearing his new gear and everything, just kind of rubbing it in his face, just joking around with him. So both of them really get baseball and they have a good relationship. Alex knew it was coming, and he also did that for Alex's benefit to get him a chance to win a World Series potentially.
Oh yeah, I didn't mention he got traded to the Cubs.
Yes.
Which is a World Series contender, which
right.
is good for Alex.
Very good for Alex, and he's going to get a lot of playing time as well. And the other thing is, the two top prospects left in the Cubs system went to the Tigers, which is huge for the Tigers because they really needed to restock the farm. After a lot of years of going for it at the trade deadline, you end up having to kind of retool a little bit in a few down years. So this was a good move for him. And also, to be quite honest with you, there's a very, very good chance Alex re-signs in Detroit next season anyway.
A whole Aroldis Chapman situation.
Right, I mean, he's basically been a Tiger his whole career outside of 1 year anyway, so...
I just mean, like, you get traded to the Cubs for half a season, and then you go sign back with your other team.
Right. And then take shots at the Cubs on the way out. I mean, Chapman did that.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. He said Joe Madden didn't know how to use me and wasn't a good manager.
What do you mean didn't know how to use... Isn't he just a closer?
He is, yeah. He got upset that he actually had to pitch more than one inning when it became crunch time.
Gotcha.
Because Chapman's a little spoiled sometimes.
We don't have to get into that.
That was just Weston's opinion right there. I apologize.
That was Weston's Corner, our new segment. Weston's Corner.
But I mean, talk about some guts it takes for Al Avila to do that. And I think that's something some other executives, now former executives, could learn from about potentially trading your son if it helps the team.
What an amazing segue. Please take a bow, sir. Take a bow. You may not get the transition because we're moving across sports, but he's referring to Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, for the last several years, has been the coach and GM of the Los Angeles Clippers. And the number one issue with the Clippers the last few years, they've had one of the best starting fives in basketball. They have no depth. And there have been a few situations where maybe could have flipped his son, who is a decent player. He's a little ball dominant for today's NBA. A little too much ISO, but he's really good. Maybe could have flipped him for some pieces and never did it. Even when it made so much sense to flip Austin Rivers for a few bench guys, he couldn't do it. And I really think that organization has suffered because of it. But now he's basically gotten demoted, and he will only be the coach and not the GM anymore.
Yes, Lawrence Frank, who is a former assistant coach of Doc Rivers and over the past year has transitioned to the front office role, who was, I guess, supposed to be the guy kind of making the calls for Doc Rivers when he just didn't have time. He is now the president of basketball operations, and Doc has been demoted a little bit. And Steve Ballmer came out and said, I've owned this team for a few years now. and now I have a better understanding of what it takes to be an owner in the NBA, and you can't have a coach also be the president of basketball operations because it's way too different of a job.
It's too much work. I mean, being president of basketball operations is a huge job. You're basically in charge of the roster. You're in charge, and even more than that, you're in charge of the whole organization. Whereas being a coach is also a huge job because you're in charge of the team. It's your job to make sure the team performs up to their potential.
Right.
One single person can't do that job. I mean, and that goes for any sport. You have guys like Popovich and Belichick, who are the greatest to ever do it in their respective sports, who probably have final say. We don't really know.
I think Pop is technically president of basketball operations, but he has such a good relationship with R.C. Buford.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, and the Patriots always have a really strong front office where, yeah, they probably make final roster and trade decisions, but I imagine their role being more of approve or deny. It's not actually go out and find the trades, go scout the players, pick which players you want to draft. It's more, I agree or I don't agree. Or in some cases, I'm sure I trust your opinion. Doc Rivers hasn't really had a guy he can count on to do that. And those are two of the best to ever do it. Doc Rivers probably going to get in the Hall of Fame. Don't know if he's necessarily deserving.
His stock has taken a big hit since he left Boston.
And rightfully so. He's not done well with the Clippers.
He has not.
When you have arguably the most talented roster in the NBA and can't get past the second round, you're not looking good.
And at the time, the upstart Golden State Warriors can't get past the Grizzlies, and Grizzlies beating you at your own game with arguably older and worse players.
You're up like 20 points on the Rockets with a quarter to go when you can't finish in game 6, and then you collapse in game 7 and can't play. I mean, this team's not been, it's been a good team. It's not been a good playoff team the last few years. I like Doc Rivers. I'm hoping this is a positive change for him. But I think this is proof that you can't do both.
I think, unfortunately, for Steve Ballmer and everybody in that organization, it was 1 year too late to make this switch.
May have been more than that.
I mean, at least 1 year too late,
right.
Because last season they could have really had a chance to do something, and now I think they realize their window isn't closed, but they aren't viewed in the same light that they were before.
And their new player, Gallinari, did you hear about him?
Yeah, didn't he get into a fight and like break his hand?
Yes. Now the Clippers have 2 guys on their roster that have broken their hand.
Very highly paid too. 2 guys.
Broken their hand from a fight. Blake Griffin did it a couple years ago, and now
punching a locker room attendant.
And now Gallinari, their new small forward that they acquired about 3 years too late. Because think about it, the only thing this team has been missing the last several years is a small forward, and they finally have one. And then he broke his hand,
and not like Paul Pierce or Austin Rivers just trying to play small forward.
No, a true small forward, a true good small forward. I think it's a good change for them. I don't think they'll be great going forward. I think they have a real chance to miss the playoffs this year.
I agree.
Oh wow. Don't know if the microphone picked up that storm, but it is storming outside.
That makes work, which is supposed to happen for me in about an hour and a half, seem very realistically canceled.
Anyway,
sorry.
Good side note. How do you feel about the whole GM and coach thing? Because while most sports have basically gotten rid of it, basketball still has a couple. I mean, Tibbs in Minnesota. Van Gundy in Detroit. I think that's it. I think those are the only 2.
And then you have
Pop.
All the
power. Well, Pop
technically,
but Pop is like Belichick in that they are the exception to every rule. Like Popovich does something, I will trust him. I think he's the best basketball coach ever, any level. And yeah, he can do whatever he wants. He has a proven track record of winning. So if he wants to sign or get rid of somebody, I'd let him do it.
See, I agree with you on that. I really think Pop is really it's approve or deny, or hey, is there anybody you want me to focus on, or this is what I'm thinking
Right.
about.
I agree,
He's just
but
the
we
final.
don't. That's what we
Yeah.
think. We don't really know.
Because I don't think Pop is on the phone to like Pat Riley, like, yo, Pat, I really want D Wade. What are you gonna do? Like, I don't think that's happening. I think it's really R.C. Buford constructing everything, but he's not gonna do anything against Popovich, which is a smart man.
Yeah, I think you're right. But do you think they should demote? You think like the Timberwolves and the Pistons should demote those guys? You think it's worth it?
Honestly, they've done pretty well. I mean, the verdict is still out on Tibbs, but right now he seems to be doing just fine. I think the main issue comes across is at the trade deadline, where Doc Rivers tried to use the All-Star game as an excuse, like, oh, the trade deadline, should be moved. But honestly, I think that was Doc Rivers trying to cover up that he can't handle both jobs, but he didn't want to admit it.
Well, you say they're doing a good job. What's Van Gundy done in Detroit other than give Drummond way too much money?
See, a lot of people were going to give Drummond that because he's a restricted free agent, so they matched whatever.
I agree,
yeah.
but like that's
See,
the only thing. That and Reggie Jackson.
They got. Oh, excuse me. There's a gnat.
Wow.
Sorry.
Good job.
Thanks.
Great podcast work.
Van Gundy has brought in Tobias Harris and gave up literally nothing for him. He's a very solid contributor, and at the time, he was viewed as a budding star in the league. He's not the top option on a team, but whatever. He brought in Avery Bradley, which I thought was a really good move. He's done well drafting and everything, and all things considered, and I talked about this at work with a friend yesterday, everything they could have done since they were right up at the cap anyway, they've made some really good moves because they've turned the roster over when it looked like they couldn't. They have some good young players and like Stanley Johnson who are continuing to develop to still one of the youngest players in the league 2 years in, and they've got a pretty good core. They didn't overpay KCP. They didn't give him what he wanted. They're like, well, okay, we're going to renounce you as a free agent. We're going to trade for Avery Bradley instead, and we have a surplus at center and power forward, so we can afford to give up Marcus Morris. And they turned that into Avery Bradley. So I think he's done pretty well, all things considered.
No, that's fair. I'd forgotten about the Avery Bradley thing. Also Tibbs, his first season was disappointing, but I believe in him as a coach.
Absolutely.
So I think he'll be fine from that perspective. Also, the trades that organization has made, i.e. getting Jimmy Butler and signing Jeff Teague, those are two good moves.
Those are two very good moves.
So yeah, I guess they're doing okay. I would just rather not have a guy in that situation.
That's why I think Van Gundy and Tibbs are both more hands-on, but than like say Popovich, at least to what we think. But they're not. It seemed like literally Doc Rivers. It was like, well, Doc, you can do whatever you want. That's kind of what it seemed like with Ballmer, where he was not only player. He was not only coach and president, he was basically the entire front office and the entire coaching staff.
And it probably doesn't help that Ballmer was a rookie owner. Like,
Absolutely.
He doesn't know. He probably thought Doc could handle both jobs because if Doc tells you he can handle both, what are you going to do?
And Doc's not going to come up to him and be like, hey, I can't handle this.
Well, I mean, he probably should have.
He should have to the betterment of the team, but he's kind of prideful.
Guys
in
in
do that.
Professional sports are generally too prideful to do things
right.
like that.
And it was another one of those things why these guys are getting, coach and president positions is Van Gundy. He was choosing between the Warriors and the Pistons, and the Pistons sold him on, hey, you come here and you're president and coach, which is
it's the same thing Minnesota did with Tibbs.
Exactly. And same thing
it's like a recruiting tactic.
Exactly. Same thing that got Doc out to LA, because Doc, in all earnest, he didn't really want to go out to LA because he lives in Orlando and they offered him a ton of money and full autonomy on what he wants to do. That storm is getting very bad. I don't know if you guys are picking that up or not.
Yeah, we may need to wrap this up before it
the
kills the
power goes out.
soundboard and we lose all volume.
But honestly, that's what I think it is. And I think certain guys can do it, but they also have to know their limits. And I think Van Gundy kind of knows his limits, but he...
Know your limits, stay within it. What is that from?
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, go on.
And he also likes having final say, because that's really what did him in Miami and Orlando, was somebody above him had other plans, and it was kind of Van Gundy just got in the way, so just shove him aside. Because he was a great coach in both of those places as the Lightning
it's inching
creeps closer and closer.
I really hope the microphone is picking that up.
Yes, I really hope it is too. Oh my goodness. But honestly, that's about all I have to say on that because started to get afraid of the storm.
Yeah, we may die, so I don't know how we're doing on time, but it may
we're right at an hour.
It may be time to start wrapping things up because you may never hear from us again if we don't get this out.
Right. It's right up in an hour, so I think we should wrap it up, or you got one last topic you'd like to discuss?
I'm not prepared for Florida Man.
You're not prepared?
We have no Florida Man this week. I'm sorry. I failed all of you. I was not prepared. I looked, I scoured the internet, couldn't really find anything great. So we're going to
That was also family friendly.
Right. That's see, and that's what makes this tough. Like, we try and keep it PG-ish, even though we were talking about threesomes earlier.
Whoops.
But that's fine. That was just for backstory.
That was backstory. That was all in the news anyway.
We try and not do the dirty stuff, but most of the weird things that happen in Florida are really dirty. Not PG, more PG-13 or R or even X. So don't have a Florida Man, unfortunately. I'll come strong next week. I apologize.
Sounds good. I forgive you. It happens. Our big Florida Man story this week is actually, it's storming and it's hot, and then it gets cold, and then it storms, and sums up Florida for you right there.
And then it gets really hot again. It's
and
usually
really
hot.
sunny.
Yeah, and then it starts raining about 15 minutes later. Everything that Weston just described, that's an afternoon.
Yeah, that's just one afternoon. Because in the morning it'll start off great, nice and kind of very
a light
good
breeze,
weather. Yeah,
partially cloudy.
11 a.m. rolls around. It is just straight sun and clouds billowing up, but the sun is attacking you. And then about 1 or 2, depending on what time it is, basically right when you're about to leave somewhere, the skies open up and it's like hurricane.
And then 30 minutes later, it's bright and sunny again, but now it's really hot because it's muggy. That's enough.
That's enough.
Where are we talking about?
That was Florida Man. That's your weather update.
There's the Florida weather update. The weather here is horrible.
It's actually pretty great, though, but you just have to learn how to manage it.
The winter's great because it's like cool but not cold, and it doesn't rain. The summers are horrible. Rains every day. It's too hot when it's not raining.
Got to keep it tropical.
And on that note, thank you for listening to The Rollout Show. Follow us at The Rollout Show. Remember, if you want to listen to any older episodes, you will have to do so in the next couple weeks because we are moving podcast hosting services.
Yes,
also, we have a lot more coming down the pipeline, a lot of cool announcements, fun stuff that I don't want to talk about just yet because they have not completely come to fruition. But look for some more from The Rollout Show. We got a lot of cool stuff coming.
Sounds good, and thank you for joining us. We're out.
See ya.